United States dollars for 2022. Gold, as a safe haven, benefited immensely from the pandemic in 2020. This was sustained by continued monetary easing by major central banks. However, in 2021, gold prices are expected to reduce to an average of 1,740 United States dollars per troy ounce from an average of 1,793 United States dollars per troy ounce recorded in 2020. World market cocoa price averaged 2,369.85 United States dollars per metric ton in 2020, compared with 2,340.74 metric tons in 2019. Cocoa price is expected to gain a 1.6% increase in price and improve to 2,407.77 United States dollars in 2021. Financing conditions. Mr. Speaker, global financing conditions remain generally favorable throughout 2020, reflecting significant policy support which induced lower borrowing costs, boosted equity valuations, enhanced investor risk appetite, and narrowed sovereign bond spreads across emerging markets and developing economies. These developments helped ease pressures on emerging and frontier market currencies, while sovereign risk spreads for most sub-Saharan African countries declined steadily in the year. Financial market indicators point to optimism about immediate-term prospects. However, Mr. Speaker, rising debt levels and increasing interest burdens across several emerging markets and developing economies pose significant financing risks in the short term. Domestic microeconomic performance for 2020. Mr. Speaker, to put the assessment of the performance of the economy for the year 2020 in perspective, we'd like to recap the macroeconomic targets set for 2020 as presented in the 2020 mid-year review. A, overall real GDP growth rate was revised from 6.8% to 0.9%. The overall non-oil real GDP growth rate was revised from 6.7% to 1.6%. C, end period December inflation was revised from 8% to 11.1%. D, overall budget deficit measured on cash basis was revised from 4.7% of GDP to 11% of GDP. Primary balance was revised from a surplus of 0.8% to a deficit of 4.6% of GDP. And F, end period December stocks of gross international reserves to cover not less than 3.5 months of imports of goods and services. Mr. Speaker, even though complete 2020 gross domestic product data has not yet been released by the Ghana Statistical Service, provisional data for the first 3 quarters of 2020 show that the targets for most of the macroeconomic indicators are largely on track. Summary of this performance is as follows. Speaker, average overall real GDP growth for the first 3 quarters of 2020 was 0.2%, compared with 6.0% for the same period in 2019. The projected outlook for 2020 is 0.9%, reflecting the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Non-oil real GDP grew at an average of 0.4% in the first 3 quarters of 2020. The projected outlook for 2020 is 1.6%. End period inflation was 10.4% in December 2020, compared to the revised target of 11.0%. The overall budget deficit on cash basis was 11.7% of GDP, excluding financial sector cleanup costs, against a revised target of 11.4% GDP. The primary balance recorded a deficit of 5.3% of GDP against the target deficit of 4.6% of GDP. Gross international reserves accumulated to $8.6 United States billion the equivalent of 4.1 months of import cover, slightly above target. Mr. Speaker, detailed performance in the real monetary, external, and fiscal sectors of the economy are provided below. Mr. Speaker, provisional estimates from the Ghana Statistical Service show that average overall GDP for 2020 grew at 4.9% in quarter 1, negative 3.2% in quarter 2, and negative 1.1% in quarter 3, bringing the average GDP growth rate for the period to 0.2%, reflecting mainly the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the economy, as I've already related to. The most recent work on GDP puts 2020 projected GDP growth outlook at 0.9%. In terms of sectoral performance, the agricultural sector grew at an average of 4.5% in the first 3 quarters of 2020, followed by the services sector at 1.9%, while the industry sector contracted by 3.1% over the period. Mr. Speaker, price developments within the year were largely driven by volatile food prices, while non-food inflation remained fairly stable. Headline inflation rose sharply from 7.9% in December 2019 to 11.4% in July 2020. The upward trend was mainly driven by panic buying episodes preceding the COVID-19 partial lockdown measure, which exerted significant pressures on food prices. However, with the gradual lifting of restrictions, the food price pressures eased and headline inflation steadily declined to 10.4% at the end of December 2020. The monetary aggregates and credits. Speaker, developments in the monetary sector during the year 2020 broadly showed increased pace of growth in all monetary aggregates, reflecting improved liquidity conditions in the economy. This was underpinned by supportive monetary and fiscal policies implemented to mitigate the COVID-19 pandemic. Provisional data on monetary aggregates at the end of December 2020 showed that broad money, including foreign currency deposits, grew on year-on-year basis by 29.6% compared to 21.7% in December 2019. Annual growth in banks' outstanding credit decreased in December 2020 relative to what was recorded in the corresponding period in 2019. The nominal annual growth of outstanding credit slowed from 23.9% in December 2019 to 5% December 2020. Similarly, nominal growth in credit to the private sector slowed from 18.0% in 2019 relative to 10.6% in December 2020. In real terms, annual growth of outstanding credit to the private sector moderated from 9.39% growth in December 2019 to 0.17% in December 2020. Interest rates. Speaker, interest rates in the money market generally trended downwards in 2020 on year-on-year basis in line with the monetary policy rates. The 91-day and 182-day Treasury bill rates declined to 14.08% and 14.13% respectively in December 2020 from 14.69% and 15.15% in December 2019. Similarly, the rate on the 364-day instrument decreased to 16.98% from 17.88% over the same comparative period. Rates on secondary bond markets have also broadly declined, except rates on the 5-year and 7-year bonds, which increased by 35 basis points and 425 basis points to settle at 19.85% and 20.50% respectively. The weighted average interbank rate declined from 15.2% to 13.56%, resulting in improved liquidity conditions on the interbank market and increased trading among banks. Average lending rates of banks also declined to 21.10% in December 2020 from 29% recorded in corresponding period of 2019. External sector. Mr. Speaker, the external sector performance was also impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic through the trade and financial. The trade account recorded a lower surplus of $2.0 billion United States dollars, or 3.0% of GDP in 2020, compared with $2.3 billion United States dollars, equivalent to 3.4% of GDP in 2019. The decline in the surplus was driven largely by a 7.8% contraction in total export receipts, especially from crude oil exports, which declined sharply by 35.2%. In addition, the value of total imports contracted by 7.3%, reflecting a slowdown in import demand due to the pandemic. The lower trade surplus, coupled with higher services outflows, resulted in a current account deficit of $2.0 United States billion, equivalent to 3.0% of GDP in 2020, compared to a deficit of 1.9 United States billion, equivalent to 2.8% of GDP in 2019. These developments, Mr. Speaker, resulted in an overall balance of payments deficit of $630 million United States dollars in 2020, surplus of $1.3 billion United States dollars in 2019. The deficit of the balance of payments was on account of marginal worsening of the current account deficit and a decreased net capital inflows in the capital and financial account. Gross international reserves. Mr. Speaker, gross international reserves stood at $8.6 billion United States dollars, equivalent to 4.1 months of imports cover at the end of December 2020, from a stock position of $8.4 billion, equivalent to 4.0 months imports cover as of December 2019. Exchange rate development. The exchange market was relatively stable, and local currency performed better in 2020 than in 2019. Pressures from corporate demand, energy-related forex demand, and pandemic-induced portfolio outflows were offset by improved forex inflows, mainly from the Eurobond issuance and the IMF Rapid Credit Facility. These were complemented by the substantial reserve buildup by the Bank of Ghana at the end of 2019. Cumulatively, Mr. Speaker, the Ghana cedi depreciated against the United States dollar, the pound sterling, the euro by 3.9%, 7.1% and 12.1% respectively. This compares with the larger depreciation rates of 12.9%, 15.7% and 11.2% for the United States dollar, pound sterling and euro respectively during the same period in 2019. It is worth noting that the depreciation of the Ghana cedi against the US dollar in 2020 is the lowest recorded in the Fourth Republic, notwithstanding the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Speaker, it is worth noting, since my colleague, the Honorable Atuforsin, is beckoning me to state that the depreciation of Ghana cedi against the United States dollar in 2020 is the lowest recorded in the Fourth Republic, notwithstanding the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Speaker, the 2020 fiscal policy objectives were adversely affected by the outbreak of the 2019 pandemic, which resulted in the recalibration of the 2020 fiscal framework during the 2020 mid-year fiscal policy review to accommodate the unanticipated shocks and enable Ghana government to implement policies and programs to ensure that both lives and livelihoods were protected. Mr. Speaker, total revenues and grants was raised downwards by $13.4 billion to reflect the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on revenues, while total expenditures were revised upwards by 11.8 billion to accommodate COVID-19 related expenditures, resulting in a revised budget deficit of 11.4% of GDP for 2020. Mr. Speaker, the unprecedented impact imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic led to the suspension of the set of fiscal responsibility rules for the 2020 financial year in accordance with Section 3, Sub 1 of the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2018, Act 9A2. Despite the adverse impact of the pandemic on the Ghanaian economy, especially in the first half of the year, implementation of the 2020 revised budget was largely on track. The provisional data of government's fiscal operations from January to December 2020 indicate that total revenue and grants exceeded a revised target of 2.7%, amounting to 55.12 billion, while total expenditures, including arrears clearance, amounted to 100,052 million, exceeding programmed expenditures by 2.4%. The consequent modest increase in total expenditures, despite the force majeure imposed by COVID-induced expenditures, is a clear indication that government adopted prudent expenditure management measures over the period. Mr. Speaker, the above revenue and expenditure performance resulted in an overshoot of 11.7% of GDP, excluding the financial sector cleanup cost. Speaker,
Minister of Parliamentary Affairs, Honorable Osechi Mensah Bonsu, Majority Leader and Member of Parliament for Swame constituency, presenting the 2021 budget in favor of Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta, Finance Minister Designate, who is yet to be vetted. Well, so that presentation was beautifully made. Let me say kudos to the Majority Leader for, after over 3 hours plus standing and intermittently a break at a point, to take a sip of what I believe was Migo purified water and comes back to continue. Well, so there has been a mixture of taxes and levies, some being introduced, some being increased, 0.1%, amongst other things. And the introduction of about 8 or 9 new levies and taxes. Well, there are some rebates as well. So in all and all together, people are, in fact, you are asking, how well has the government managed the economy? We're going to speak to an economist. He's also the president of GUTA, and he is in the person of Dr. Joseph Obeng. Doctor, good morning, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, good morning, sir.
All right, how are you doing this morning, sir?
We are trying. It's only that you've given me a position to be being an economist, but I'm a common trader. I'm not an economist.
All right. I've given you a certificate in advance. Take it in good faith.
Thank you.
All right. So, for correction's sake, Dr. Joseph Obeng is not an economist. He's the president for GUTA. Well, Dr. Obeng, having corrected this one, I believe that you have witnessed the 1 year here budget that was presented last week by Majority Leader and Minister for Parliamentary Affairs. He says that this government is the better manager of the economy. Do you totally agree with this?
Yeah, I'm not in for comparison because it's not my duty. I look at the issues at stake.
Okay.
And then the issues at stake at the moment is the increase of some taxes,
all right,
which we're not expecting. Today, the truth, before the budget was spread, GUTA has come out saying that we are not expecting new levies, new taxes being imposed on us. And so when the VAT was increased, and then the national NHS was also increased, for a bit taken aback. And that's our major concern, because we sympathize with government. The fact that government need resources, government, because the wake of the COVID-19 have actually thrown government resources, as we all know. And that the fact that they have to enhance on revenue collection. So we are in with government to do that. That's why we even support the petroleum taxes that they have introduced, because that one captures almost every segment of the society, and we are for it. But when it comes to the income tax, just a few of us are captured into the net of paying this income tax and the VAT, and that having increased it have become counterproductive, as I will call it, because it's not going to achieve the results, because we are overtaxed and overburdened with taxes, just a few of us. And that's why before the budget we have suggested to government that they should expand the tax net to enroll in a lot more people. Because I'm a signatory to the VAT and the blueprint that established the VAT. And then the motive was that we start with the 3%, and then going forward, we reduce it to about 2%, where we will make it compulsory for every trading activity to be part of it. As of now, just a few trading companies are captured into paying VAT, and a great majority of them are outside the payment of VAT. So if you increase it again, it means that it has become disincentive for the few who are paying. And when it comes like that, then people start dodging payment of taxes, because he shouldn't pay for his prices to go up. And that's what our problem is. We have also suggested to government that we have other areas where government can galvanize resources, like abolishing the tax exemption system. The tax exemption system is being abused. If you look at the free zones and all that, people just go there in order to be able to dodge payment of taxes. And so this is the area that actually worries us. And apart from that, the fact that government should be able to mobilize resources, because government is overstretched with demand to doing so many projects and all that. And how is it going to do, especially coming from last year when there was virtually no activity for government to achieve that target? But the way to do it is what? Because if you look at these taxes, we are now going for the continental free trade area, where we need to tone down cost of doing business. At the same time, we are increasing cost of doing business. It's counterproductive, and it's not going to help much in that regard. Yeah.
Well, so as president of GUTA, and having looked at all this, I mean, this is just a proposition from His Excellency. Parliament is yet to approve most of these levies and taxes. But it indicates that, for instance, the 1% increment in NHIS levy, the 1% increment in VAT services would be seen at the fuel pumps. That is what Honorable Osei Mensah indicated in reading the budget. Now, is this an indication that perhaps the end user of these petroleum products at the fueling stations is going to suffer? Basically, are we bound to see an increment in transportation fares? This has been a concern of most Ghanaians over the past 2 days.
Yeah, I think government compensated the drivers by exempting them from paying their quarterly taxes. I hope you are aware of that.
Yes.
So government is very much aware, and they compensated the drivers. What we did not even support is the fact that government exempted small traders from paying their tax stamp quarterly. Because now that we want to enlarge the tax net, then we are also discouraging people from paying the tax, those smaller ones who are also learning to pay their taxes. That's what I don't see the relevance in exempting those people also. That's our worries.
So what do you think is I mean, they say that it is to perhaps help the economy revive, if not sustain, in the wake of COVID-19. But whilst giving some tax rebates and waivers, some other levies are being introduced. What do you think the effect is? Are we moving steps forward or moving steps backward? Or perhaps we are remaining at the same place? You take.
That's the confusion. You understand? And that's why I would have loved that we just expand the tax rate and then abrogate the tax exemption. And then the tax exemption one can only apply to be given. And there are so many ways of doing this. But if you exempt some people and then increase where a few people are paying, then it means that you are overstretching the few who are captured into the tax net. And that's where my problem is. But for any innovative way where government could have reached out to a lot more people to get these resources, I wouldn't have gotten any problem at all.
Will we be burdened as a country, as people, with the introduction of these new taxes? To what extent? As you rightfully indicate, there seems to be some confusion. But when you look at, for instance, the 30% rebate on taxes on income taxes for the hospitality industry, you realize that it is only a select of people that frequent or patronize these services. Meanwhile, when you look at roto levies, for instance, when you look at NHIS, for instance, when you look at VAT, for instance, this encompasses the totality of citizens. And so, don't you think that the difference has been made clear? That for those who patronize the tourism industry, they may have some cushioning, whilst those of us who do not frequent that industry would suffer the real impact of the increment in levies.
Yeah, is the motive behind that is necessary. I think the motive behind the hotel industry is the fact that actually they have suffered because of the COVID, and maybe government want to resuscitate them with this exemption for a while. And so I don't know the actual motive, but that's what I am saying. If that is the case, then it's positive. You understand? But normally, I think that once we have the taxes and people are paying without complaining, then we have to encourage a lot more people to be paying rather than to be increasing a section and exempting others. That's where I do not support. But the fact that we have to do tax, because tax, if it is affordable, the compliance level is very high. If it is high, the compliance level is low. So you do not actually achieve much when taxes are increased. So let me thank you for now. I think your other colleagues are calling me so I can also talk to them.
Oh, all right. Well, we'll let go of you at this time.
But you can call me later, and then I'll have all the time for you.
Very well. All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Joseph Obeng. You responded at such a critical time, and we are grateful for at least the few minutes that we've spoken. Dr. Obeng is the president of GUTA. He has shared his thoughts about the same incidents, the budget that we had last week, and he says that the burden would be quite too much on us. One thing he said that I'm very much happy about is that when the tax burden is high, people do not comply. When it is low, people easily comply and people do not feel the impact so much. And I so much share in this one. What is your thoughts? What are you also thinking far as this is a concerned? Well, you've heard from our dear brother, the president of GUTA. Let's take a quick peep at what was presented in the budget as we were doing before we came on this call. We'll come back and we'll continue with some more interviews.
Why are you like this? Oh, how can free up with this year? A piano penny food, some different year. My dassy hattie. A drove you meet me 1 minute, maybe. Honeyberry. Mammy, I'm about to support you. So, young. And I'm one of your where do I Jackson and Jack Capsule. Oh, how we now to a chat. Boss, Mrs. Young, meet me co planet. I don't know why. Money actually go customer tomorrow.
Numun super na wanya pomudin. Se wo ba numun so a, hwe hu ni se eye mega purified mineral water. Eye nso a yeto ni baby pa. Asaso ni so se kroje. Se wonya mega purified mineral water bogu ubu a, wo see you manumun super. Mega mineral water de edanso. Esan say the modern technology so na ye. Ede na nkabia ni atri. Mega purified mineral water. Bacteria na mhenu aberem. Eye very hygienic. Obia di one dance here. Mega mineral water neatly packaged for 500 ml bottles mu. Na wani boswa na ukon donsio. Wobanya Mega purified mineral water to bebia. To phone call Dodowa Amount Frotipa Junction. Anafre 050-7055-409 and 055-392-1088. Mega purified mineral water. Akona kono.
Announcements on Adoatv. Contact Adoatv for your general announcements, proclamations and publications, job vacancies, etc. at a very affordable rate. Call 050-92-57754, 020-9494-258, or visit our marketing desk at Stepwork premises. Adoatv, bringing good things to life.
Do you know that we have phenomenal influence on our various regulatory bodies? How many of these regulatory bodies do you know within the country? Are you aware you can lodge your complaints if and when you are not satisfied with a product or service? How often do you ask the relevant questions? Whom do you call when things are not rightly done? Connect with me on Regulators on Adoatv as we deliberate on the purpose of these regulatory institutions, their functions, accomplishments, and shortcomings. We ask the back-breaking questions and get the unpolished truth. Be a part of our conversations.
Yeni Masatek, so we are kunini roofing industry nim enti Saudi roofina na wadwen Asatek. Asatek wo quality long span roofing sheeter esan nail free trese ehia so de dadoabo mu nanso etimu dan no so a pampe amframa anahum entumi nya no hwe. Asatek quality long span roofing sheets with beautiful bright colors with anti-fading and anti-rusting properties. Trese enwe na ache na empanso enti wo ma 30-year warranty. Terms and conditions apply. Asatek quality long span roofing sheet die eye madan bia say a warehouse, school, hotel, hospital, sorry, ana say wa ufi. Use Asatek quality nail free long span roofing sheet to be. Now what dando be jina so na yin ho. wɔyɛ delivery services papa bi a ɛmfa ho ne fa kwan wɔ Asatec bɛma wɔ saka order between 3 and 5 working days. Wɔwɔ VIP delivery services so a 1 day pɛ na wɔ saka. Hwehwɛ Asatec akyiri kwan wɔ Tamakon 22 Meridian Road wɔ ne Cocoa Board Warehouse na bɛn Takoradi Efie Kuma number 9 wɔ bɛn Efie Kuma Fidelity Bank no Volta region so wɔ Akache Tatome GN Bank nkyɛn hɔ pɛ. Asatec, sheltering you for life.
We are one man short. Should we invite him?
Yeah.
It be old cargo.
Can I join you guys?
Yeah. Always drink fresh, natural eggs, mineral water.
You still got it.
Always keep hydrated naturally. That's my secret.
Manufactured with the primary aim of preserving nature's finest minerals necessary for a healthy mind and body. X Natural Mineral Water. Simply natural.
Thanks for staying with us. This is AM Ghana. You're on Adoatv with your most humble servant, Reggie Adi. We're streaming live on Facebook, so whatever your messages are far as the 2021 budget is concerned, the several tax introductions, amongst other things, the current standing of debt to GDP, amongst other things. Let's see how we can better ascertain or understand these concepts. We have Mr. Francis Boy, who is a tax analyst on the line. Mr. Francis Boy, good morning and thank you for joining us.
Good morning and thanks for having me.
All right. Several taxes and levies indicated in the 2021 budget. Mr. Boy, what would be the essence of all of these taxes? Ghanaians say these are going to be a burden on most of us.
Yes, it's going to be, or it's going to create some level of hardship to us. But like we discussed before the presentation of the budget, Ghanaians have, in one way or the other, enjoyed some benefits from government. And these expenses needed to be paid for. So if you look at when the pandemic emerged, government started subsidizing and paying for electricity, water, even to some extent providing meals to people. And this has created a huge debt available. And so looking at our public debt, there's nothing that the government can do than to introduce some taxes. The good thing is that the level of increment is very minimal, and so we think that though at the individual level it is minimal, in terms of aggregate, we hope that it can assist government pay for some of these expenses. So for some of us, we were expecting these taxes to come because probably in the past we have created it for ourselves.
Well, so I mean, nobody was ever ready for COVID-19. It came, the impact was suffered. But right from when the benefits started coming, the subsidies, the free water, free electricity, amongst other things, a lot of people, especially the minority in parliament, indicated that we were going to eventually pay for these things. Is this their words come true? Should we have forewarned ourselves?
Yes, eventually somebody has to pay for it. You see, in governance, there's nothing free. Governance is about the people who contribute money for elected people to spend on our behalf. Yes, nobody expected this COVID to come. In times like this, the best would have done was to go and borrow to cushion the economy. But you realize that in the past, we have taken so much debt to the extent that our debt level is now almost 300 billion Ghana cedis, which is about 76% of your GDP. Now, if GDP represents the total output that we have as a country, we can produce in a year, and you have 76% you are going to give to other people, then eventually you will have nothing at home to consume. And so we are being careful that we don't go to a state where Ghana will be described as a debt-distressed country, or we will be going back to HIPIC, because if your debt goes beyond some level, you can't pay. And whatever that loan that you take, you have to pay extra money in terms of interest. And we don't want our future generation to be burdened that level. So that is why government looked at what is the immediate low-hanging fruit that can be plucked to feed the economy. And I think that these are some of the things that the government has done. The increments are very small, 1%, 10 pesos, 20 pesos on petroleum products. We
petroleum
even
products,
if
it stands
one
at 30.
can,
My calculation tells me that the 1% on petroleum products stands at 30 pesos.
Yes. No, for the petroleum products, they were in monetary terms. So for the bola tax, it's 10 pesos per liter.
Yes.
And then for the energy recovery levy, it is 20 pesos. So in total, we have about 30 pesos.
Right. Now, how feasible would this be? I mean, collecting 30 pesos, I mean, do you think that it would be ideal to driving us towards cushioning us based on the effect of COVID-19?
Yes, it will go a long way, because a lot of consumers buy petroleum products. If you don't drive your own car, you take trotro. So, I mean, petroleum product is the easiest way you can get small amount, but at a larger consumer base. So it will go a long way to provide some amount of money to support the government budget.
Okay. Would this translate, therefore, into increments in transportation fares?
Yes, it's expected, but all depends on what the driver unions will also do. Even though if you put the 30 pesos and 20 pesos together, it amounts to about 5.7% increment in petroleum products. The driver unions may decide that they are going to increase transport fares. But you know that transport fares is not only petroleum products. It's a factor of other elements. So we wait to see what the GPLTU and the other unions will say. If they intend to pass it on, then we should see some increment in transport fares.
Okay, so let's take some of the increments one after the other. Now let's speak about the COVID-19 health levy. Government says that this would help in procurement of vaccines. Ghanaians are saying that this means that we are going to have to pay for our own vaccines or buy our own vaccines. Now, I want you to clarify this for us. Which would be beneficial? The government charges this in terms of some small levy, or perhaps we are allowed to go to the hospital based on our own volition, pay for the vaccine and take it, considering the fact that some Ghanaians who may also pay for these vaccines are not willing to take the vaccines at all.
You notice that globally, vaccines are not for sale to individuals. It is government who buys it.
Procures them, yes.
So if we say that we should allow people to go to the hospitals to do their own vaccination, then means that you go and then you have to pay for it. No, it is globally. That is not how it is done. So government must look for money buy it for its citizens and then you vaccinate your citizens. That is how it is done everywhere. So we cannot allow people to go to the various sources to go and pay for it themselves. Now, because government is not a businessman or government doesn't do business, people, we must pay for it, and it comes in the form of taxes.
Yeah, how about those who are saying that they don't want to take the vaccine? They are also going to pay.
I think not deciding to take the vaccine is what the matter is. That is not the issue, because globally, every country is trying to eradicate this pandemic. It is not our wish that we should be where we are. The number of people who are dead, that is not what we want. So majority of us are saying that let's buy the vaccine, let's clear this vaccine from our country, then we'll be free. So if the minority are saying, few people are saying they won't take it, then that is to themselves. But that individual cannot use his own individual choice to affect the masses of us. And so the best is that government should collect these taxes, vaccinate all of us, so that now I'll be free to go to my workplace without the fear of being contracted with a virus. So I think the decision is a majority one than an individual choice.
All right. So when you come back to the transportation sector, for instance, the road toll increment that these transportation vehicle users are bound to pay at the toll booths, amongst other things, it seems that is not factored into the increments that we seem to mention so far. We seem to base the increment on the petroleum tax increment, amongst other things. Wouldn't this also have an effect on transportation fares?
Yes, that is also expected to have some increment on the transport fares. You realize that the last time we reviewed the road toll was in 2010. The previous one was 2001. So for some of us, it's taking too long to review it. That is why you have noticed that now the government is saying they are going to do automatic adjustments every year. The problem that we, including myself, we have failed to do is that after paying the road toll, do we hold the people accountable that fix our road for us? Do we do that? If we don't do that, then we must blame ourselves. In some other jurisdictions, when they pay the road toll, in fact, some jurisdictions pay more than what we are paying today. When they pay, the roads are very good. Why should I pay road toll, or why should I be in traffic to go and pay road toll? And we don't question this. Look at Kaswa traffic. You have to be in traffic for a very long time.
Oh, you use that same stretch, eh?
Of course.
Oh,
so,
then you share in my woe.
So we must question the people so that we do not pay road toll to be in traffic. That is not how it is done. But you and I, after we pay, we just go to sleep. And when we are in our traffic, we feel comfortable. And so maybe from now going, all of us should begin to question certain things. Then we see how things will do better for us. But of course, we are going to see some increment. Maybe those of us who are paying 50 pesos now, we are likely to pay 1 cedi, and those driving 4x4 will pay around 2 cedis. It is likely to increase transport fares, but maybe it is time we all contribute.
So then the question is it fair that all of us haven't suffered the impact of COVID-19? I mean, the country is suffering individually. We are suffering. Businesses have suffered. People have been laid off. Is it fair that these burdens will be leveled on the citizenry who are also trying individually, for some who have lost their jobs and their businesses, for instance, to feel these impacts?
You see, we hope or we wish that there would have been another choice. But right now, you cannot go and stand in the United States and ask them for grants. Nobody is prepared to donate any money to you. You cannot also continue to borrow, else our children in school are those who are going to suffer, or we will be described as a hippie country. So the options are very limited. And so if you find yourself in such a situation, then the shortest cut, which is of course not the best, is to levy some marginal increment so that it can help you pay. If you look at the current budget, we want to spend 113 billion Ghana cedis. But our total revenue is 72 billion cedis. you ask yourself, where is the 41 billion Ghana cedis going to come from? Even with these taxes, so we say we want to raise 72 billion. Where are we going to get the balance from? Are we going to continue to borrow so that we'll go hit it into recession? Then everything now we produce, we have to go and give it to some people. Then we will be the poorest country in the world, which is not the best.
Okay, can you throw light on the sanitation and pollution levy, what is called the Bola tax? How should people also be paying for this?
I think there are some ways to again collect some revenue. Sometimes you are not too sure whether the Bola tax will be directed towards really cleaning the various cities.
He says that it is for the establishment of 14 medical waste treatment facilities. Yes, so yeah, that is it. 14 medical waste treatment facilities.
Yes, so what I was saying is that we are not too sure because we have had this environmental tax before. You remember currently, if you import plastic products into Ghana, you pay 20%. And the purpose we introduced was that we were going to deal with plastic menace in Ghana. But we still have plastic issues in Ghana. Go to our beaches. So, yes, the government has said they are going to establish those facilities. Let's wait to see. Is it going to clean the filth from our streets? It's a question that we all have to wait to see if it's going to be answered. But that is how it is. We have had this Bola or similar tax before, which we did not really benefit from the plastic menace. And so if we are waiting to see this one, then probably you and I will have to watch and hold government accountable that you collected 10 pesos on every liter. Where is the treatment plan? Are Makola and all the other data, are they clean? If it is not clean, then we have to question them.
Do you think that is necessary at all? Because irrespective of, some contracts being given to some sanitation institutions to help in the cleaning, there's been the establishment of waste recycling plants, some more to be established amongst other things. We are in a country where we don't segregate our waste. And this one is saying that it is for the establishment of medical waste. Medical waste, and so perhaps proper disposal of PPEs in the wake of COVID-19 in such times. Do we need a special Bola tax or Bola levy in addition to what we are already doing? Already the thing we were paying one way or the other. What would this new increment do at all?
I think if we had other money somewhere, we wouldn't have introduced this one. And you know that government must continue to at least clean and treat this as we speak now. Now that we don't have a government continues to treat it. The difficulty that government finds itself is that the money available is limited. And so they don't want to channel the existing money into any other thing. So the easiest way is that let's bring on board additional taxes so that we'll use it for Bola. And I think that is where government finds itself. We have been keeping with things. But right now, the money available is not enough because we want to use it for other things. And that is why we've called for this Bola tax.
Okay. Mr. Boy, we have a friend also on the line via Zoom, Dr. Adoatv. He's an economist. So we want to hear from him as well so that we compare views and share knowledge on these things that bother us as a country. So if you will stand by, let me quickly invite and speak to Dr. Adoatv. Dr. Adoatv, good morning. Hello, Dr. Adoatv.
Yes, good morning. Good morning.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning to your viewers.
All right. We have Mr. Francis Boy as well. He's a tax analyst. I believe you want to say good morning to him too.
Good morning, Francis.
Hello, good morning, Doc.
All right. So let's speak to you, Dr. Adoatv. So with the introduction of all of these new taxes and some rebates amongst other things, as an economist, when you juxtapose the play by the government in the current administration, they say that they are the better managers of the economy. Do you agree to this as an economist?
I'm not going to answer that question. I mean, politicians put all sorts of ways to their performance. What is important for me is that before COVID, I knew Ghana was on the right track. Before COVID. All indicators show that this was an economy that was the right track.
Okay.
Had very high expectations. Then COVID hit. What's important for us is to ask the question of how did we get here? Now, I was really excited. I remember when I spoke to you on Friday, I mentioned that for me, the issue of the debt to GDP ratio shouldn't be discussed just as a ratio. But we need to have a content analysis. Where have we come to this point? And I was excited when in the budget, it was indicated that only in just 1 year, we've added close to 74 billion, out of which 53 billion of that is as a result of the COVID, the financial sector cleanup, and then the excess capacity that we pay for our energy. Now, so what is the option now to government? Do we go on and borrow to fund these, or should we look at domestic resource mobilization?
Okay.
I mean, in 2019, the government indicated clearly that for the 2020 year, we were going to look at domestic resource mobilization to enhance the capacity of the Government Revenue Agency, both in terms of personnel and then logistics, widen the tax nets. So team numbers were being given. What is important to note is that while the digitization has got to the level where we can pick the Ghana card number to become team numbers, the Ghana Revenue Agency can go on and collect more taxes. But this is not going to happen this year. In the next 2 to 3 years, we are going to have that. Immediately, how do we solve the challenge that we have with funding the COVID-related recovery under the cares of a Tapa program? Whatever resources that we are going to mobilize, the intention is to fund that. So any other sort of arrears that is going to be hanging around our necks, build up our debt to GDP ratio, the understanding is that it has to be paid for. At 76%, if we are going to borrow, it's going to come at a higher cost.
Okay.
So the alternative is to look within. I think what the government did was that because he noticed that over the year 2020, there was a decline in fuel by 7.5 and diesel by 9.5, it was going to tap into that reduction and see if it can collect some revenue. And that is why I think the government, in its wisdom, introduced the levy for the energy sector recovery of 20p per meter, and then for sanitation, what you call the bonus tax of 20p. We need to invest in sanitation as well. So, because the government is looking at the recovery through the cares of our tobacco, any other thing that we seek to do now is not going to help them. We need to fund it. So I think that the government in this wisdom thought that if we have saved in a reduction of over the last year, then they will tap into that. And that's why some of us call for the way in which we come with this adjustment, that if possible and the decline is coming down, maybe only government to be more efficient. Some of the decline can be saved. Some of these things that will come up. But I think they are tapping into that, and they're expecting that the two levies will lead to an increase in the pump by 6%. So then what they are saying is that if you've gained almost 8% over the year, they are taking back 6% to pay for all of these. I don't have any problem with that. The problem I have is that as soon as the reasons why these levies are imposed are achieved, then the levy should be taken off. Because that Ghanaians deserve to also have some sort of cushion in this time of the COVID.
Does it ever occur that once a levy has been increased and it has served its purpose? I understand they say that this is a medium-term strategy. Once we've been able to achieve, and if it is achievable at all, looking at the increment in levies, how sure are we guaranteed that we are going to revert back? Because, mind you, whilst we seem to want to cushion the coffers in terms of the losses we've made out of COVID-19. We also want to consolidate the economy and also find new ways of generating revenue.
The new ways of generating revenue doesn't have to come with new taxes. Like I said to you, we need to widen the tax rate. We need to collect all taxes that are due. We need to reduce the exemptions. We need to be very strict about taxes that have not been paid. And the government has given some, what do you call it? Some, how do they tell me? They are giving some freedom to those who didn't pay their taxes.
Okay.
To have up to September 2021 to come and pay the principal and no interest. When we are able to do all of these things, we will get more revenue without necessarily imposing new taxes. So these levies, if Ghanaians are going to pay, and I will say, look, this is the difficult choice that we have to go through. But our expectation is that once this is paid for instance, the 5% levy on the profits before tax for the banks. I mean, once the financial sector cleanup costs is paid, you should expect that it should be taken off, so that the banks can also use that extra to expand and have a wider outreach for the banking public. So it is critical that the government will not use this as a new levy and keep it there forever. Once we go beyond the COVID-19 related health expenditure, for the payment of the vaccines, for the new hospitals and all of that, I think that the 1% increase in the national health insurance levy drop down to this level. So that anytime these choices are being made, and Ghanaians believe that these are just being made for a short time, pay for something, then that is it. If we are looking to develop an economy beyond aid, these are the difficult choices that we need to do.
Okay.
And we should also be mindful of the fact that we do not distort the road to the recovery. Because taxes dumping consumption. So we should be very mindful of that, and I'm very certain that this government will have done its own work well to try to make sure that our recovery is not in any way dislodged. So that is the what I'm going to say.
Okay.
But in all of this, we should be excited that there were no taxes likely to affect businesses, the private sector. Was very critical.
Okay.
What we rather have are the tax incentives that are being given to businesses, like the tax rebate to those in the services industry that have been hardened by the COVID, 30% tax rebate to small businesses, a suspension of their tax stamps for the rest of the year, to commercial vehicles, a suspension of their vehicle income tax for the rest of the year, and then to also take away some other taxes, like the extension of the waiver for those who have tax arrears to make. So these are all incentives to help the private sector. If there are any taxes that were imposed on them, that would have been detrimental to job creation and expansion.
Okay.
So we, the consumers, will have to buy the bullet and pay for it, hoping that the private sector will still provide them jobs. The employment under the cares of our program will be realized, and then our economy will recover.
Okay.
After our economy recovers and income taxes increase, I'm very certain that we'll move beyond this.
Okay, let me speak to Mr. Francis Boy on the other side of the line. He's a tax analyst, so I want to ask him, Mr. Boy.
Hello.
Yes, so we've heard from Dr. Adoatv. He's still on the line though, but I want to find out from you. Dr. Adoatv is saying that we need to be able to raise these revenues so that we can sort ourselves on both sides, be it COVID-19 and also in revenue mobilization. But when you look at the financial sector clean-up levy, which is 5%, for instance, the banks have also been giving perhaps some tax incentive of perhaps some, I don't know if it's a reduction in the taxes. But I know that the financial sector cleanup levy, that 5%, is one way or the other going to be passed on to customers of these banks. How is this supposed to turn out to play?
I think it is necessary because some of us, as far back in 2016, we expressed the reason why we, as ordinary taxpayers, should pay for the mess up and the mismanagement in the banks. So I remember on some platforms suggested that in other countries we have that levy on financial sector there. So it is good for me because I do not need to pay for mismanagement. What we expect is that, of course, it is likely to translate into an increase in credit because currently the banks pay 5% national fiscal stabilization levy. And so if you add this one to them, then it's going to be additional 10% levy in addition to their existing corporate tax of 25%. So clearly, it has taken their corporate tax rate to around 35%. But I believe that it is in order because most of them don't pay VAT and they don't charge levy. So, of course, we should expect some increment in the interest rate.
Now, are these increments not becoming one too many? For the bank, for instance, there is ESLA increase, which is going to put some burden on motorists and food prices, amongst other things. There is also going to be the 1% increment in NHIS levy. It goes on and on. About 9 of new levies and increments. All of this together. How is this significantly going to impact the livelihood of Ghanaians?
Well, we expect the banks to also absorb some. In fact, the banks, I think that they may not have any serious moral